We've got people who are just on autopilot, listing a car, putting it on there and going away and doing all the other day's jobs. Whereas actually you need in used cars, you need to be personal about it. You need to know your cars. You need to, I look at some sites that I've had and some sites that I have, and I compare them with other groups, dealerships, adverts, and I'm like, do you know what? If I was looking at that car, I'd probably buy theirs because they've gone into detail. They've talked about the car. They've put on there the history. They've talked about last service back 6 months ago, things like that. And that's the kind of stuff that sets you apart. And
hello and welcome to the Armchair Show. My name's Tanisha and I'm so thrilled to have you guys here with me today. Today we're joined by some fantastic guests, so we'll kick off with a very quick introduction. I guess if we go around the table with who we are and where we're from.
So I'm Richard Seward. I come from the Sinclair Group and I'm Head of Strategic Development, which is basically all the jobs that no one else has got time to do. So operational support, marketing, purchasing, sustainability, environmental, IT, systems, future scanning for partners, that kind of stuff.
Amazing.
Hi, I'm Mike Allen. I'm Managing Director at Cambria Private Capital. I am also an advisor of various startups and businesses such as Carwow, Bumper, DSG Finance, and a business in Prague.
Hi, my name is John O'Byrne and I am the Sales Director for Endeavour Volvo. Doesn't sound as interesting as the guys, but, but yeah, it's good all the same.
Hi, I'm Tony Shasha, and even less interestingly, I'm the owner of Celtic Subaru and Mitsubishi in Swansea.
Amazing. And thank you so much for joining us today. So I guess to kick us off, I always like to ask everybody how they got into this industry, because everybody has such a completely different journey for how they got here today. So I guess if you'd like to start with what your journey was.
Mine is really different, I suppose. I joined it quite late. I came out of university, worked for PLC financial services companies, worked in marketing, and eventually got to the stage where I ended up running the group marketing function for the Sinclair Group after about 15 years of working in different industries. And then jumped from marketing into operations, ran a dealership, ran a franchise, and then jumped back into kind of looking after operations. And I guess what I've got, I suppose, is an outside of the industry perspective. And I've been out there and seen how the PLCs operate when it comes to financial services, and they are fanatical about accuracy and data and getting it right. And that's what I've tried to bring to the motor industry, really.
Amazing.
Yeah, so I fell into this sector as well, as many people do. So I started my career as a fund manager at UBS. And our brief was to find companies that were cheap during the tech boom. And we weren't allowed to buy technology shares. So back then, that was early 2001, there were about 15 quoted motor retail groups, and they were very, very cheap relative to their assets, paying very good dividends. And it was at that time when people thought the internet would stop car dealers. Everybody would buy cars online and not have to interact with dealers. And we've heard that story plenty of times, haven't we, over the years? So I was fortunate that I got to work with some great businesses, the Reg Vardis, CD Brammells, European Motor Holdings, and then from there I went from buying shares to selling shares and advising through various businesses where I was fortunate to, help advise and write research on great companies like, Marshall, Inchcape, Pendragon, Virtue, Cambria. So I think I kind of fell into it at a time in the market when everybody ignored it. But as we know, you ignore this sector and the people behind it at your peril. And, I've ever since been, as we all do, kind of fall in love with the sector for different reasons.
It's funny the way everyone always talks about the motor trade is how they fell into it, and it's always probably been in my family. My dad has a garage back home in Ireland. He's got like a body shop, technicians. It's just an independent garage, and they do some sales as well. And I always remember when I was younger, I used to be in around the garage, and I'd always say to Dad, I said, "Look, you'll fix them, and I'll sell them, right? Because these hands don't get too dirty that often, as you can see." So I went to university, and I did a marketing degree, and it was actually I was coming out just in 2009, and everyone probably remembers the financial crisis of 2008, 2009. And it was one of those things where Dad said to me, "Can you do something else? What else can you do?" I said, "I can stay in and do a master's." He said, "Just do it." So I did a master's in marketing, and like that, I was handing in my thesis, and 2 weeks before, Dad had been out to one of the local garages. It was a garage called George Corporate Motors. They Mazda, Saab, Seat, and Skoda. And he said, "Come here, how's your young lad getting on? Is he finishing university or what's happening?" He said, "Yeah, he's actually finishing up in a couple of weeks." He said, "Well, look, we're looking for a sales exec. Would he be interested?" And it's those chance encounters, that it's kind of everything happens for a reason. And so I stayed with George for 4 years, and unfortunately my other half, she studied fashion, and she was like, "Jono, I think you need to go to the UK. The fashion design industry in Ireland isn't as big, unfortunately. So we want to make a move." And she said, "Are you coming or are you not?" So I kind of had this decision of, do I stay? Do I go? And I said, "Do you know what?" Looked it up, did a bit of homework, and I actually emailed John O'Hanlon, and I said, "Look, I'm coming to the UK. Would you have any roles?" So he invited me to come and have an interview in Southampton Mercedes. And I always remember it because I flew over. And bear in mind, Southampton Airport isn't one of the ones with the Ryanairs. It was, I think the flight was about £400 at the time. So I flew over, had the interview, and there was a Volkswagen job going. But the Volkswagen franchise director he was in Milton Keynes with the brand. And they said, "Look, can you come back next week?" And I thought, oh my God, I remember ringing my mum, and she was like, to fly back next week, they better be paying for it. And I thought, oh, I don't know about that. So I was in Southampton. Funny story. I was in Southampton, and after the interview, you're like sweaty and everything. I changed all my clothes, freshened up, bundled it all into a suitcase, and I got a phone call to say, "Can you come back out? Andrew's going to come and meet you." So I thought, I can't wear this shirt again. It's it's a ball of wrinkles. So I went in. I saw, right, where's the nearest? I said, "There's a Next." I went into Next, and I asked for it. Could I get a shirt? The only one they had was one that was in the package, so it comes all. So I was like, well, I'm not going to get it ironed, so I just had to put on the jacket and hope that it didn't go, "Why is your shirt all wrinkly?" But lo and behold, the rest is history. We're here, and I did the last 10 years with Marshall Bridgeway, then Marshall, and just in November I joined Endeavour. So it's been really good. And do you know what? I love the industry, and I think the guys will probably echo the sentiments. It's one of those industries that when you get into it, you don't really want to leave it. And it gives you the actual skills to transfer across so many different industries, because I had this conversation with someone recently. The motor trade, we kind of pigeonhole ourselves into the motor trade, but actually we do P&L, we do recruiting, we do health and safety, we do sustainability. We've so many transferable skills, and that's the best thing about the motor trade. It gives you so many strings to your bow. So I love it.
Amazing.
Yeah, well, I've been in the motor industry all my life, so it was chance. I didn't mean to enter it. It was a summer job before going to college, and as a parts advisor, and I never left. And I love it. I mean, as I say, it's been my whole life. It's nearly 40 years now that I've been in the industry, and I've worked my way through from parts, service, warranty. Never ever in my wildest dreams did I ever think I'd be owning my own dealership. That never ever occurred to me. I thought to myself, if I can get to a manager level, that would be great. I've made it. But yeah, it's as you said, there's so many transferable skills. You've got to be everything to everyone.
Jack of all trades, isn't it?
Jack of all trades. You've got to. I remember when I was working on a service desk, and I thought to myself, "Gosh, this is the hardest job ever." So you've got to be a salesman. You've got to have some technical knowledge, customer service. You've got to be good on the telephone. Yeah. And you develop those skills, and the training within the motor industry, it's probably not the best, really. You kind of learn off each other and internally, and just developing the way through. And it's been, for me, it's been a fantastic journey. I've been to some brilliant places with different manufacturers and, you know, resorts and hotels and places around the world which never would have booked yourself, and experiences, and you do things that you've never planned to have done otherwise, and it's been superb. But, you know, as you said, it's such a challenge. It always is a challenge. It's never easy. You never seem to have good times, or when you do, they're very short-lived. And then the tough times tend to be a lot longer, don't they? But yeah, it's something that's been kind to me. The industry's been good to me, and I've met some brilliant people as well over the years. Which have had an effect on me as well, on my personality and how I behave. You know, good influences as well, and some wrong uns.
So a few of you have mentioned about how tough and hard the industry is, but the one thing that I noticed as you're saying it is your faces still light up, and there's still so much joy that the industry brings you. So what's your favourite things about the industry?
Do you know, there's a phrase that I always refer back to, and it was taught to me by my first ever DP, and it was George Corbett. He said, the motor industry, Jono, is the hardest, easiest job you'll do. And I thought, what does he mean by that? So I probed him a bit further. He said, so easiest. So you drove in this morning in a brand new car, lovely, heated seat on. You've got a desk, you've got an office, you've got customers coming in that we're attracting, that it's your job just to talk to them, sell them something that they most of the time want to buy. But it's hard because when that's not guaranteed, you'll have to work hard at it. The hours are long. You can have great days. You can sell loads of cars if you're selling or whatever in whatever part of the dealership, but the days are long when you're not either. So it's the hardest, easiest job you do, and I completely agree with that. That it's underestimated that it can be tough. You know, it is a tough thing.
Well, there's no such thing as the perfect dealership, is there?
No,
and I think that's one of the joys of working in the industry, is you think I can go in there and I can absolutely make a difference, because there's that opportunity to change that, or we can try that, or we need to be a bit tighter in there.
Yes.
And every site you walk into, you can find somewhere you can go, right, let's work on that.
Do you know?
And there's not that many places where you can go and have just that opportunity to say, right, we can make a change when we get into this site now.
What I always say to people, would you prefer to go into, if you're taking on a site or taking on a group, would you prefer to have a group of good high-performing dealers, or would you prefer to have ones that are underperforming?
Yeah, you want to get
You do, don't you? Yeah, because there's only one way it can go. And that's what I always think. And then people are like, oh God, why would you go there? Because you can make a difference. And it's easier, like you said, to spot those things. And there is so many in a dealership.
You have to be resilient, though.
Yes.
You will have days and days and days, and you get fed up of walking out of the dealership and all you've done is lose money.
Yes,
all you've done is lose money. And that goes on for months and months. Eventually, you see it change, and that's the most amazing feeling.
Exactly.
It's quite interesting you say that, because from my view, which is, you know, a lot more top down, I always used to say to investors, look, profits in this sector, doesn't matter how good you are as an operator, and you know, there's many fantastic operators, but just don't expect profits to go up in a straight line. That will never happen. And to be honest, the CEOs of all the companies I work with always used to say that as well. So great companies could have profit warnings because it's such a complex sector. There's so many factors. You're in the middle of the OEM world and then at the economy with consumer dynamics, you know, and the reason why I think everybody's addicted to this sector is it's so complex. There's room to make a difference. And as you say, you won't get it right every day.
No, it's the ultimate tease. Look what you could win.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And you just chase that all the time.
But I think the personalities and the resilience bring the industry together as well. And most people, and particularly the operators I've seen more of in the last year, are very, very resilient people. So when I see people write it off that don't really know much about the sector, I'm like, oh, I've been here before, going back to 2001 and COVID and financial crisis. Everybody always writes off this sector, and they all, not to say there's no challenges.
All of a sudden it bounces back yet again.
So
Well, we've all got smiles on our faces because we're nutcases. The motor is full of nutcases. You've got to be in the motor.
Speak for yourself.
I mean, you wouldn't want to invest in the motor industry otherwise. Why would
doesn't
you?
make sense.
I mean, the returns on your investment are so small, and the risks are so great. But in reality, we all get a buzz from it. And for myself personally, when we sell a car, it's like, oh my God, it's fantastic. But I get the same buzz if we sell a washer or if we sell an hour. My service advisor said, well, we booked a nice job. And I'm, wow, great, fantastic. It's so exciting. Because yes, hopefully you make a little bit of money, but actually providing a service as well, aren't you? You're doing something good. And then selling the car and seeing those customers drive off and they're happy because it's a lovely purchase. It's an emotional purchase when you buy a car. There is definitely a buzz to be had from that. So, so we all nutcases, but happy nutcases.
It's so cyclical, isn't it? I was often told that, look, in the motor trade, you're going to see it go up, you're going to see it go down, because it's such a big purchase in people's lives that it is that weary. It's not like going out and buying a new dress that you can go, do you know what, I'll have that next week or I'll have that this week. There's so many external factors that pull and can affect it. We look at the interest rates at the moment. You look at people's mortgages going up. You look at all those little factors that are affecting it. And like you said, we're at the liberty of our OEMs as well. And that's a challenge too, that if we've got bits like ZEV mandate that has obviously just ceased this year and is going to see it move to 28% next year, and that's causing difficulties in our industry, and it's hard for everybody to to keep everything going perfectly all the time when you've got so many things trying to knock you back.
You mentioned the EV mandate. What other challenges do you kind of see us going into? We're at the start, 16 days in to a fresh new year. What other challenges do you see we might encounter this year?
I was going to talk about the challenge of ZEV mandate. For me is I look back to the early adopters of BEV who were 3 and 4 years ago, and I remember when Volkswagen launched ID, we opened up ordering and we had so many people keen to place an order to get on with it. The problem with ZEV mandate has been a race to the bottom over the last few months. So prices, you look at some of the discounts, some of the offerings on there. I'd ask you to go and find anybody who's bought an EV in the last 3 years that's not in negative equity, because the manufacturers have pushed prices so hard to get to this number and to affect this number, and we're at risk of really, disheartening the people who were the pioneers of the BEV revolution when it came, because they're the people that queued up, put the orders down without driving one, seeing one, anything like that. And how hard would it be for them to keep going again and go to their next BEV, knowing that they had a financial hit on their last one? And you look at the government now going to tax electric vehicles from April, and there's changes to benefit in kind. So whilst the government are trying to drive it and increase it to 28% this year, we've got so many things that are dragging it back. And I think we need to all get in tandem and work together on it. And the lobbyists that are pushing for grants, whatever it might be, you can't drive something forward with stuff dragging it back as well. So I think we're out of tandem, we're out of sync on it, and something does need to change. It's going to be a race to the bottom.
I mean, I remember the credit crunch quite vividly, really, whereby we had 6 months of kind of really bad book drops on used cars, which I don't think we'll see this year. We have seen it in the second half of last year. But support came quite quickly. So government started to get bailed out. OEM started to get bailed out. You saw, that support got quite quickly into the dealer network, and we had a scrappage scheme as well. And you look now and you think, God, where's? You've got to assume there is no support that's going to come. Therefore, you're kind of on your own in terms of your business has to be kind of resilient, robust, and you've got to, go with the assumption you're not going to get any type of support. But look, I think most dealers have seen this coming and have been preparing for it over the last year. Be nice if the government was a bit more helpful and understood the industry. But as Jono said, there's some great lobbyists there, and maybe that industry, viewpoint's coming through. But on a positive, clearly, we are seeing 100-year change. This move to BEV is so important, and people. I don't think you can really rely on public transport, etc. People like being in their own cars. There's a change cycle, and we shouldn't lose face of that really as well. And there's some great, some great product, great people, great partnerships, and with that, you normally get through it. But clearly, there's challenges in the first half of the year.
With the mandate going up 28%, in effect that means that nearly a third of the cars that are turning up in 2 years' time are going to be electric vehicles, and we've already seen that the residual value of EV has a big impact on your ability to make profit as a used car retailer. That's something we're going to have to be really careful of. I worry for the finance companies. Never thought I'd say that, but how do you calculate an RV on this stuff when it's fluctuating so quickly? And we've got this real period of pain that we're going to have to work through. It will get better. I've come more to believe that we will solve these things. Whether it's climate change, electric vehicles, whatever it is, we will solve it. And the advent of maybe solid state battery, once we get that, so we can produce it effectively, that's going to solve a lot of the problems around charging capability and speed of charge and where you charge. But in the meantime, there is this pain cycle to go through, and it will be about hanging on, I think. And for lots of dealerships, they may not be able to hang on through that period. The good news, I suppose, and as I think people have seen it in the year just gone, if you are retailing used EVs and you're buying them at the right price, then there is some demand.
There's a demand, absolutely.
There's a price point for everything, isn't there?
Exactly.
And it's just about finding that price point. But they have been so expensive for so long. And, we operate out of South Wales, fairly sort of not the most affluent of areas. And we see the difficulty in selling really, really expensive electric vehicles. So a lot of people who live in the valleys and have terraced houses, or they live in the regenerated bays, which are all apartments. So where do you charge these things?
It's a challenge.
Kind of cables running. So it's a really difficult moment to kind of get through.
It's a real push for PCP, isn't it? Because you're thinking to these
if
people,
you're a customer, PCP
is
the way to go, or personal contract hire. But it's getting that message across to the public as well, because the public have not bought into electric yet. It's all lease, it's all fleet, it's all company car owners. And there needs to be a better lobby to change public opinion, because the voices against electric are quite loud. The voices for electric are far more subdued, and I think that needs to come from the top, really, from government, and give that confidence with infrastructure and all the things that are putting the public off. But apart from that as well, the other concern for me this year is F&I income, and the effect of finance commission disclosure and FCA and the High Court rulings, all of that. I mean, that is going to be a big concern, and that will also potentially be a threat to our industry this year, because we've already seen F&I income drop a little bit. I mean, there are large voices on the TV who are exaggerating really what, people who perhaps have been wronged, what they may get back, from these claims. And as always, it's the lawyers who get rich, and, there are a lot of people who are out there who have bought cars, who have been very, very happy with the deal, loved the car, loved what they were paying every month, and then all of a sudden they think, well, hang on a minute, have I been wronged somewhere down the road? And it's actually an act of self-harm yet again. So that worries me a little bit, going through for this year. I hope they can get that resolved.
There's only one way finance rates are going off the back of this, and that's that. And that means that it's the people in the street who are going to be most affected by it.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, I do think that sector, I mean, clearly there's a lot of negative noise at the moment, as you allude to, but actually the positive maybe towards the end of the year is everybody would have looked at it. It needs a clean bill of health. They all need to decide what is the correct and fair kind of process. And once that's kind of set in stone, which I think it is already, to be honest.
Yeah, so do I.
Well, we thought it was.
Yeah.
The regulators had their way of operating. We've been going along with it by and large. Yes, you'll get a few bad operators, but you assume this is the right way to do it, and then you find that actually the speed limit wasn't 70, it was 60, and you were doing 70 all along.
But again, the resilience of the sector is such, whether they're kind of brokers, finance providers, etc. Once that announcement came out, they completely changed the processes almost over the last 3 or 4 days. We didn't see a major drop in customers,
Depends, yeah.
wanting to see that. And it's down to those people now to say, okay, we're satisfied with what you're doing, and this is the right way, and this is how the industry moves forward. And unfortunately, that's just going to take a bit of time going into this year. So, but hopefully we get the clean bill of health back end of the year.
Well, one thing's certain, the motor sector is resilient. They always find a way, no matter what gets thrown at us.
Yeah.
There's always a solution.
Yeah.
And so I never panic now. I get worried. I worry about the weather, but I never panic now, because I think to myself, no, it'll get sorted. It's never going to be as bad as they make out at the beginning. So there's a little bit of confidence to be had as well from that.
I think it's just communication with our customers. The commission disclosure piece. Customers obviously expect that we get paid for brokering the finance and for facilitating that. It's like our mortgages. I think on all our mortgage, we got told what the broker was going to be paid, and we were aware of that. So I think it's just how we place it. And I think we're very fortunate that a lot of our customers will still need the finance, regardless of what red tape or what we have to put in front of them or ask them to sign. They cannot purchase our vehicles without it. So,
like we said with EVs, you've got to be looking at PCP or at least something at the moment to protect yourself.
Yeah. So I think it's just once like Mike said, we just have to conduct ourselves correctly and just ensure that the customer is getting a fair outcome and make sure that we're looking at that side of it. But I think most places have adapted to it. And it's just clarity and communication. But the problem, like you said, about the online noise that you see, and people will see it as a bit of a PPI thing to go after. And even on my social media, I often get these things pop up saying, have you financed a such and such a car, and that's what's going to be, and that little clickbait that'll try and drum up support for that. But and we're always going to get that.
Do they tell you how much commission they get out of your claim?
Yeah, I've got to check my emails. I'm waiting on the response.
That's the negatives, right? They're the problems that we were going to encounter in the challenges. But with every challenge, there's opportunity and there's room to grow and room for things to improve. What do you think the real opportunities are this year, where we're going to see some growth, and if the dealers that are savvy, that get behind it, that are kind of quick to focus on those areas, might see the biggest improvements?
So for me, I mean, clearly, if you're thinking long term, if you've got your house in order now and you're saying, right, decisions I'm going to make now are going to benefit me in the next 10 years, 15 years, some of the best businesses are always born out of a recession, or great businesses grow. So there's a famous saying that never waste a good recession or downturn. So from an M&A perspective, clearly there's a natural life cycle of owner-operator businesses. It can get hard, and, there'll be opportunities there, I'm sure. In my world, where I look at early-stage businesses, there's always, I'm kind of fortunate, and I can see some great technology. So, for example, when you're saying it's really hard to sell EV cars, there's some great battery management solutions out there that would make the sale of EVs really transparent. And actually, the data shows you that the degradation of the batteries isn't what people think, and it's using data there. There's some great software to make dealers more efficient as well. So I've always looked at businesses or backed businesses where the consumer has to win. There's a great customer journey, and it's got dealers at the heart of it as well. There has to be a win-win. And normally at this time of the cycle, there's great opportunities, but your time horizon, you need to be thinking about, where do I want to be in the next decade? And I'm going to make you'll never get your timing 100% right when things are looking dark, but you can stack the odds in your favour for long-term value. So that personally excites me at the moment.
And one of the strings I've got to play with in my bow is sustainability. And we're looking at and just signed a contract to put additional solar panels onto as many of our dealerships as we possibly can. Over the next 25 years, we're putting them onto 15 to 20 rooftops. It's probably worth about 25 million. And there aren't that many initiatives that you could do right now that will get you about £1 million extra profit over the next 25 years. And it comes with also the fact that you're doing the right thing, which is a kind of key tenet to what we try and do. So, I think, yes, we need to focus on the cars, the parts, the workshop hours, etc., but also look at how your business is running and how it's operating. And is it as sustainable as it can be? Because every time we come across a sustainability opportunity, it turns into this win-win where you save money and you do good. It's hard to sort of turn down those business cases. We're changing the supplier for our number plates. They produce them, then they collect them, and previously they were sent down to incinerator in Cardiff and they were burned for fuel. In the future, they'll be ground down into pellets and they'll be used to make prosthetic limbs. Excellent. So you go, what a lovely change of use.
That's a great idea.
Oh, and by the way, we're going to save £20,000 per year from doing that. So it's like, well, why would you not do that? And there are all these little wins that you can find that around the operations of the business, if you can implement those as well, at the same time as you're looking at how well you perform, how effectively you manage your stock, all that kind of stuff. But don't forget those and leave those behind.
I think you're right with sustainability, Richard, and I'm going to do a little plug there. We won Sustainability Retailer of the Year for CV a couple of years ago, so we did a lot of little incentives and initiatives for the guys. But something like the solar panels, if we are moving to, you'd think over the next 10 years a fleet of so many electric cars, instead of paying for fuel, if you can generate your own electricity via that, that'll be so it'll be so beneficial to your businesses. And
if you look at your carbon output right now, the biggest contributor to your carbon output will be the fuel, the petrol and diesel you're currently putting into your company cars.
Yeah, exactly.
It's huge.
And at Endeavour, so we opened last just January the most sustainable Volvo retailer in the country. So we've got solar panels across all the top. We've got a rainwater harvesting facility as well, and things like that we then repurpose to wash the vehicles with. And like I said, we're transferring electricity back to the grid, and we are reducing carbon footprint. And even small things that, it's only a real small thing, but changing our price boards to QR codes. So it's one print off, not multiple, not having to, I've lost those pages, can you print them again, and reducing paper wastage and small little things. Because as an industry, you don't really see that many initiatives, and you don't really see that many things that can drive down or offset our carbon output. So I love that prosthetic limbs idea. That's really good.
Yeah, that's great.
Really and if you can find those kind of interesting stories, then that's the way that you start to kind of get your staff involved in the aim as well. Because otherwise it's kind of, they're all a bit remote from it. Sustainability, I get it. Yeah, global warming, okay, climate change. Yeah, I try and do what I can.
Yeah.
Recycle at home, blah, blah, blah. But if you can find those stories, create those myths and get people going, oh, well, that's a really nice little story that we're going to put. It definitely helps.
I do think with ESG, it's you've got to be authentic and you have to do real projects now. I do see some companies that have kind of set the bar too high and then they realise they're not going to do it.
Yeah,
it's probably like my dry January and stuff. you have this kind of really ambitious idea and then you say, oh, no, I'm not going to achieve this. And the examples that you've given is what looks to be small kind of project, if you're consistent with that all the time and you're authentic, you keep finding stuff, you keep finding out what other people in the industry doing.
Exactly.
It will make a difference. If you could suddenly say we're going to be net zero by next year, it's just not going to happen. So
one of our problems though is we don't talk.
Yeah.
Generally as an industry about that particular area. We might get together, have conferences about how many cars you're selling.
Yeah.
But we never really come together and say, where is the opportunity as an industry to be more effective in this area?
Yeah.
And I think something along that, if we could bring representatives together, I think would be real beneficial to us all.
I'd say everybody is doing lots of little things that, like you said, nobody knows about. So one thing that we do, and it's when a customer comes in to get their car washed in service or get their car serviced, we give them the opportunity to have a wash, or do you want us to plant a tree? So, and save water, plant a tree. And you know what, it's their little bit of giving back, and like you said, they don't have to do anything because they're like, we'll save the water and we'll plant a tree on your behalf, and we then do a little donation to a hospice at the end. But it's really good, and it's something that they go, the amount of times that people, they love it because, like you said, they're not actually actively having to do anything. They're just going, that's really good, and they've done something good, and I think that's the thing, make it easy.
And of course, it's one area where we don't compete. It doesn't
Exactly.
matter if I save more carbon than you save.
That's it. Exactly. It's all for the greater good.
I think
Yeah.
commercially, your customers are tomorrow. That's going to mean more
huge.
to them.
Of course it will.
You know,
Of course
so
it will.
you're future-proofing your business by doing
Well, your
good things.
customers and your staff, the more staff are coming and want to understand, well, what's the purpose of the business?
Yeah.
Exactly how are you going to behave and act, and what's your stance on the environment and the community around you. And again, you've got to be authentic on that. It's got to be about who you really are.
Exactly.
But if you can bring people in, I think I saw some stats where if you can bring people in on that promise and you deliver on those kind of ESG type activities and get them engaged, then staff retention goes up by 52% in the first 2 years. Because you've brought them in on a promise that appeals to them, and you've delivered on it.
Yeah.
And of course, they want to stay with you.
You do. Have you found resistance in your business? So I'll give you an example. I wanted to go to a paperless when I was head of business. I said, look, let's do paperless service department. And if I had £1 for every time I got, no, customers like to have their invoice. They like to take it away. But actually, when we did it, that was just non-existent. That wasn't the thing at all. It's like, just go in and have the conviction. And like you said, get the staff on board as to the why, and then everybody's on board with it.
Yeah, we've gone paperless, digital and sales, and most of the resistance was actually about a change of process internally. That was where it was really coming from, that it was going to take longer to do it, that actually was more inconvenient for everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, I reckon we save about 1 million sheets of paper a year.
There you go.
From
And
having
that's
done it.
behind the scenes. That's the real benefit of it. It's a cost implication. It's a cost.
And you
cost
haven't
saving.
got boxes and boxes of pieces
Exactly.
of paper, and it's never the deal file or the job card that you want to find. It's always the one that's missing.
Exactly. And isn't it so
now
easy
now
to
it
search?
never goes missing.
Yeah, exactly. You know?
I was hoping we could finish off today's episode by discussing used cars a little bit. How can we do better to promote, sell, market, price our used cars this year? Because that's the ongoing discussion, isn't it, of how we can make more profit, how we can sell, our stock quicker and have a quicker turnaround. So what I guess is your advice to anybody listening today that's eager to improve that area of their business?
We've just engaged with CarCare, who have come into the UK, and they basically will shine a light on your used car process, how long it takes the car to arrive, how long it takes for it to be prepped, where does it get stuck, and then how long ultimately does it take to sell, and just importantly, how long is it then on site before it gets delivered. And it is amazing what that shows and how it just illuminates all these sticky areas that you just didn't know were going on. And we were talking earlier, the WhatsApp groups that you've got about that car's at the body shop, I think, and you're scrolling through trying to find out, is that the one we sent or is it the other black one? So by focusing on process, by investing in that kind of system, we're definitely seeing dividends in terms of much better understanding about where our stock is and the ability to process it quicker and reduce your days in stock, because every day is a cost.
That's what I was going to say. Speed. It's if you take one thing, it's speed. It's buying it right. Buying it right from day one is the key, because any car that's bought wrong will never stand you well. But buying it right from day one. But it's exactly like you said. Now, I think we all start off with these grand plans of in the workshop by 48 hours, on display, photographed by 72 hours. The big thing for me that I'm trying to drive in with our team is the speed of delivery, because there's so many things at the other end that's out of your control. Like you said, the body shop, the delivery, it's not here, it's not there. But when we sell that vehicle, and I'm trying to get the mindset of, when you go to the doctor, they tell you when to go. You don't just rock up and go, I'm coming next Wednesday. They're like,
Well, why
no.
is it every customer goes on holiday? They buy
Exactly.
a car, and I'll be back in a week's time.
That's it. We have to set that agenda. So we've set 72 hours. And even yesterday, I was going through our orders and I'm like, right, handover dates 5 days. Why? Handover dates 5. And it's just, we have to get into the mindset, because what we do is we have this this automatic reaction of, it's right, we bought it on Wednesday. Okay, do you want to do a week from now? And it's not. It's not like, you remember.
What customer wants to wait a week before they take possession of a brand new or used car?
Everyone here probably has Amazon Prime, because you want it tomorrow. If I can take it home today, I will. So why is it almost, come back in a week, And it's always, do you know what? It's the 20th. Let's do it on the 31st. Let's have 10 handovers on the 31st. And it's like, no. Because like you said, every single day that car is here, it's costing us in stock. Absolutely. So if we can move it on, it's money back in the bank, it's less stock and interest, and it allows us to go and buy another car.
And it clears the site.
100%.
And, I mean, one of the observations, and I'm non-operator for full disclosure, but it's interesting whenever you ask those types of questions, and they'll say, "Oh, it's about 20, it's under 20." And I work closely with Car Care with John as an advisor, and we see it time and time again where, you know, it's the WhatsApp groups, it's the spreadsheets. Nobody really had. The boss thinks it's under 20, and then the deeper you go into the organisation, it's kind of 30 days. You know, it could be more, and it might be, oh yeah, but we're waiting on the part for this one car, and it's like, well, what about all the other cars that you've got in the forecourt? So there's great products out there like Car Care, but equally, I think Auto Trader, there's some amazing data there as well. And what's really what I just observe is there's some great operators, and there is a role for gut feel and operators. There's plenty of experienced people that have had 30, 40 years, but the most powerful combination I see is when they're engaged in that data and they put it to rest with their gut feel, because you know, a lot of cars have different kind of specifications, there's different needs, and they're very, very good traders. But if you use the data that's there, surely you'll get that kind of better outcome.
Auto Trader, you pull their hair out, don't they, about the number of cars that are really highly rated on their retail rating.
Yeah.
And are sitting below market price.
Yeah.
And using that opportunity to say, actually, no, this is a car that we're going to undersell if we're not careful.
Yeah.
We've got to charge more for
It happens all the time. And I mean, you know, as an owner of a small dealership, I don't see cars on a forecourt. I just see piles of cash.
Slowly disappearing.
It's slowly disappearing. So it's really, really important to turn around. But, you know, you've just touched on such an important point there. There are different types of dealers and retailers. There are large groups who have strict rules. Yeah. And then you have the smaller owner drivers who can be flexible, and it's a lot more personal. So when I look at a car, it may have been there a little bit too long. It may have been overage, but I know from experience and from my gut that's going to sell. Yeah. And you hold on, and actually you can be proven right quite often. But really, what you said about under retail and under pricing, it's criminal sometimes how we see cars that should be priced at far higher than they are, and there's just somebody bailing out all the time. And it's a race to the bottom then, isn't it, really? And we should be braver with our own margins. As we were a couple of years ago when used car prices were quite high. It was great. We all benefited from that, didn't we? But then as soon as somebody gets a bit twitchy, the prices start coming down. And that's a great tool, Auto Trader, because we look at that and we see what the suggested retail is. We don't rely on cap and all the rest of it. We look at it, we take all that data on, but then also your own knowledge and experience, your own gut.
You know your market, you know your area as well.
Exactly. But I really hope that, you know, that retailers sort of learn those lessons and hang on to those prices a little longer.
Yeah.
I think it's hard, you know, I guess intuitively, as things get a bit tougher in the first quarter of the year, the temptation to just bang it out early will be greater in this environment. So it's it's interesting.
But sourcing stock is so tough.
Yeah.
Why do we want to give it away? You know, I just don't get, you know, and there are some, you know, groups out there who have very strict disposal policies, so the prices get reduced very quickly or they get traded out. And I think to myself, well, actually, no, hold on, because you've got to replace that car. It's all well and good having something that's dead on the forecourt that's been there forever. Get that. But sometimes just hold your nerve a little bit if you know your market. Especially much harder when you're bigger.
Yeah, to do that. Mass market franchises, where the rule is that car's now 90 days, it's got to go.
It needs to go.
So that red Polo gets sold for discounted price, and then you go and buy a red Polo. Yeah. And you put it in the spot next to it, and you might have paid more than...
Exactly, yeah.
So, why not just hold on, you know... Actually, what is there something wrong with that particular car? So go and touch and feel and drive and clean and all the rest of it. Solve all that, and then think about, well, what's the market saying the price for this car is? Not the 90 days it's been on my lot, but what's the market saying the price is for that car?
Yeah.
But we don't do that.
We don't.
And
We
too
don't.
many times we don't do that. We rush to the. It's got to go.
It's far more difficult the bigger you are.
Yes.
Because you
be
cannot.
strict.
You have to have
It's too much detail.
controls, yeah.
Agreed.
And when you're a small retailer with, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 cars, then you know those cars personally,
Correct.
don't you? When you're a bigger group and you've got perhaps 1,000 cars, and then it's very, very difficult. You rely then on
Everyone still
pure data,
employ
don't you?
maybe one used car manager to look after the 30 to 70 cars on their site.
Yeah.
So you still got the same kind of personnel that can.
Yeah.
The classic example was, I guess, towards the end of Kazoo, where they spent so much money on sourcing cars, and then a lot of the dealers were buying them.
I've been there. Yeah, I've been looking at it and going, okay, we can
I'll
have
have that one.
Yeah, exactly.
Because all the canny dealers kind of knew how hard it was to source and rode on the back of their marketing spend to kind of get, and that's the owner operators, the canny dealers that really understand the demand supply dynamics of the market. That's they won out, didn't they? Because they really understand those intricacies of the market.
Great. And the challenge, I think, will be as well, guys, is with the supermarket type retailers that you see, because you're trying to compete with them on price, which is not possible. And in some cases, I've seen it from brands before, is that yes, the network gets offered the vehicles, but then they'll just go to a supermarket who can retail them for a bit less than us. They don't offer the same warranties and etc. that we can. But in some customers' eyes, depending on the age of the car, depending if it's new, that's not really a big fuss. And they're looking at their price driven. So that is difficult, and that's hard to keep up with. The one thing I think you touched on it, Tony, was when we do miss in used cars, I feel particularly that we've got people who are just on autopilot, listing a car, putting it on there and going away and doing all the other day's jobs. Whereas actually you need in used cars, you need to be personal about it. You need to know your cars. You need to, I look at some sites that I've had and some sites that I have, and I compare them with other groups, dealerships, adverts, and I'm like, do you know what? If I was looking at that car, I'd probably buy theirs because they've gone into detail. They've talked about the car. They've put on there the history. They've talked about last service back 6 months ago, things like that. And that's the kind of stuff that sets you apart. And the one thing that I'm driving home with my team, and everyone will remember See It Now, right? When it launched, we all think it's a great thing, and we get used to it. We kind of take it for granted. Whereas I talk to my guys about this is like it's the best opportunity you will ever have to get somebody hooked in, because if they've inquired on our car, they've probably done on 2 or 3 more. So set yourself apart from your competitors, go that extra mile, do the video, show that car in all its glory. Because if you're buying a car, we've got so much choice now that I can send a request into Sinclair's, I can do whatever it might be, and you look at it, if the same car that might just be maybe a couple of miles different or maybe a colour difference, you go to that person. Then it then becomes, where do I want to? Do I know what car I want to buy? Yes. Then it's where do I want to buy it? And that's what sets us apart. So we have to really work on that service piece. A book I read recently, and I'd recommend it to any of the listeners, called Unreasonable Hospitality. It's a guy called Will Godara. He was the general manager of the number 1 restaurant in the world, had 3 Michelin stars and things like that. And what set them apart, because they've got great chefs, right? The chefs are brilliant. The food is lovely wherever you go. But what set them apart is the service they offer to the people. And small little things like, so when the customer comes in, they ask, how did you get here? If they've parked outside, they'll go out every hour and put some money on your parking meter, so you never have to think, oh God, I better leave and go and put some things. But it's stuff like that. What can we do differently? Because the cars will all be the same. It all boils down to how we look after our customers and how we make them feel. And I think we need to adapt that element of it, because we almost forget, and you talked about it earlier, about selling a car. We all want to sell a car, but we forget that, we treat them as numbers as opposed to people. And I think...
Well, I mean, it's become our USP, customer service.
Yeah.
That is it. I haven't got a gin palace. I don't have millions. I don't have big marketing budgets and all the latest technology. It's just us. It's people buy from people.
Yes.
And it's become very much our USP, where we cuddle our customers to death almost, that they do not want to go elsewhere. They trust us, because we'll do right by them. They'll get a good deal. But more importantly, should something go wrong, if they have a query, it's how we respond, how we react. And it's a long game. You cannot be short-termism about it, which car supermarkets have to be, really. But as a small dealership, we can play the long game and we look after those customers so that they come back, buy another car. And the retention side of it as well is have programs in place to retain them, give them a reason to come back and experience a great service time and time again.
I think anybody who's involved in trying to sell used cars, go and ask them when was the last time they tried to buy a car for themselves, and what was that process like, and how did you go through it? I'm trying to buy a banger for my daughter. She's going to take a test and start driving, and it's really interesting. So the behaviour that you fall into the moment you get into this, and it is about, you go onto eBay or Auto Trader and you've got the listings, and the first thing you do is right, let's have a look.
Yeah.
What are the images like? What's the car look like? Before I've even looked at the description of how many miles, whatever, right, what's it actually look like? And frequently I'll be, no, there's that crunch here, or the seats are looking tatty. So it's lost me before I even get anywhere near wanting to purchase it. And that's just a behaviour I fall into as a buyer of cars. And I haven't bought a car in 20 years. And when was the last time our used car managers actually bought themselves a car?
Yeah, great point.
And it might be worth going and giving them £2,000 each and saying, right, go and buy a car. Because we'll sell it on afterwards for about the same money. But here's your challenge. You're all in a group. You all got £2,000. Who can buy the best car for £2,000? And see what that experience is like.
I wouldn't see my guys again. Didn't buy a car, boss, but I had a great week in New York.
But just trying to switch on to what's the customer expecting, what drives the customer, and making sure that we're coming from understand the customer, both from point of view of service, but also before we even get to speak to them. How are we declaring ourselves out into the ether? How are we being perceived in terms of the pictures, the descriptions? The danger is AI is coming along. We're going to end up with every single description will be exactly the same. It'll be very easy to have a lovely, beautifully written description, but there'll be nothing personal about it. So how do we take the basis of, great, use AI to do the heavy lifting, but let's add some personality to it as well.
I tell you, AI is interesting in used cars. So I work with a business called AAA in Prague, and they're quite big in Czech Republic, Poland, Slovakia, but they're using AI now to source cars. Not the whole thing, but their ability to source is using that technology is phenomenal, and they can grow at 8-10%. They can dial it up, they can dial it down, and to be fair, they've been working on that technology for 5 or 6 years. It's not a kind of all AI, and to replicate, and they've built that organically with their people. But I do think AI will be a game changer on tracking that car. So that car that you originally sell as a new car, if you can track that for ownerships down the road, and then it's the technology's there to do it. The tough bit is building that proprietary technology that suits your business and your sales process. I think it's hard to do it off the shelf. As we were talking about before about development and stuff, you can't. It's very hard just to say it's going to suit all of your businesses, and because you all have different processes. But it'll come quick. That.
Armchair Marketing.